Thank you all for joining me. My name is Peter Wakiyama, and I'm a partner in the intellectual property group at Pepper Hamilton. Welcome to the Pepper Podcast. Pepper has a proud history of advising entrepreneurs and emerging growth businesses around the country. In this podcast series, we are profiling some of our client companies that are stepping up to help society during the COVID-19 pandemic. I am pleased to interview my client doing great work, Sam Payrovi, Chief Executive of Consortium, also known as Custom House. Sam, welcome and thanks for joining me today.
Hey, Peter. Good to get on a call with you. How are you?
Doing great today. How about you?
Doing well.
Good. I know you've been a busy man. So, Sam, please tell us briefly about Consortium, specifically prior to early March of this year, before everything changed for so many companies. What were Consortium's goals for the year? I know the company was in the middle of a transition, but please tell us more about that.
Sure. So, when we first met, which was about 4 years ago, Consortium was actually in a mini pivot already. So the company actually started as an individual brand. We were the makers of customizable weekender bags, and that brand was known as Saintly Bags. I was in finance and investment banking for 14 years. I launched that and was running it on the side. And then I got it to a point where I thought it was large enough to, take it full time and finally pull the trigger and leave finance after all those years. And I did that. And as I began to grow the brand, we started seeing volumes grow. The product was maturing. And we decided, to grow the brand, really, we needed to start doing a little bit of wholesale. But the trick with wholesale for a custom product is that relationship doesn't exist. So we were out there trying to convince retailers to sell a custom made-to-order bag in their store. And while every retailer we talked to told us the same thing, they said they love the product, but they can't sell the custom made-to-order version, we just didn't understand why that is. Because we looked at it and we said, look, you don't have to purchase our inventory. You have no capital at risk. There's no discounting or theft on a product that has to be forced off your shelf, or a product that doesn't have to be forced off your shelf. There's no trucking. There's no logistics. This is a drastically better setup and arrangement. If you can do it on custom suits and custom shirts, why can't you do it on custom bags? And, we were banging our head against the wall trying to make this work, and I was hearing simultaneously from some other brands that I knew that they were having the same problem. So what we realized is that this isn't something that was exclusive to our brand, and it was more of a systemic problem. So what I realized I needed to do was kind of become the central organizer for this customization market, more or less call it a clearinghouse, and say we're going to be the platform that is going to connect all these customizable and made-to-order brands to these retailers that want to sell them. Actually, when we first started, we thought we would be the retailer. So we were a direct-to-consumer marketplace of customizable brands. So we got that platform up and running. I got 5 brands together, another brand that does custom shoes, custom watches, a custom loungewear brand, a custom handbag brand, and myself, and we started to make this work. We ran a pilot. We worked with a couple of individual stores to sell through them. And then in 2018, we decided to go on a pop-up tour. So at this point now, Saintly Bags had become Consortium, which was the larger platform. And we did a pop-up tour for Consortium. We went a month in Vegas, a month in Chicago, and then we got to New York, and we did about 6 months here. I got to New York. I hired Natalie Pava, who is basically running the company with me. And as we moved further and further forward with everything we were growing, we were realizing every day that this could and would work as we planned it, but for it to really scale, we needed to be a B2B company rather than a direct-to-consumer company. So a lot of what we did in 2018 was done with the intention of always keeping direct-to-consumer open, but towards the end of 2018, we just decided to go full speed ahead on the B2B side of the business. And we pulled back our own direct-to-consumer effort and we grew the B2B business in 2019. As that was kind of happening, so now, it started with Saintly Bags, then it was Consortium, and then we realized we needed a showroom for retail partners to come in. And as we decided to expand and grow this showroom, we realized that we could actually build it into an event space. So we decided to kind of pick up business number 3, which was creating a showroom/event space called Custom House. The Custom House, we spent about 5-6 months raising the money, identifying the location, negotiating the lease, beginning the purchasing, and doing everything we had to set it up. And we opened that up at the very, very end of 2019. You could pretty much say New Year's 2020 was effectively the launch. And then Custom House really kind of started to take off like wildfire. There were actually 3 things going on there. It was our own showroom, of course, for retail partners to come in and discover what we're doing so we could grow our B2B platform. We were doing events at night, and the part of it that we didn't expect to grow as fast as it did was co-working. So we partnered with a company that brought co-working into our space, and every day we would have anywhere from 20 to 40 plus people co-working out of our space. And honestly, it was growing so fast that we began to start thinking about next locations and what the next layer on top of this business would be. But to kind of like wrap this all back around, the entire reason we did Custom House was we got to a point where we did not want to raise venture capital for Consortium, the retail platform. And we realized that by opening up a showroom and an event space business, we could actually use the revenue from that to fund the primary side of the business, the Consortium side of the business. And it was going exceptionally well until coronavirus happened.
Oh, thanks, Sam. That's quite a story, and I have to admit that I didn't know all the pieces, even though along the way Pepper's been helping you, including the lease late last year. And I recall you were very excited about the new space and the new opportunities around that. So thanks for a full update. And obviously, there's been quite a bit of pivoting there. One word that comes to mind for me is your ability to diversify in a way that you could raise funding, not through the traditional venture capital route, as you mentioned, but through this new arm of your business, the event space, and also the co-working spaces. So things were off to a great start for you in 2020, it sounds, until, of course, COVID-19. So around that time, early March, we understand you received a call from New York's Economic Development Corporation with the idea of turning your event space, your Custom House, if you will, into a manufacturing facility to make PPE, personal protective equipment. What was your initial gut reaction to that idea?
Yeah, well, it happened a tiny bit differently than that. When COVID-19 hit, Natalie and I were every day trying to figure out what we could do to move the business forward. I think, Peter, as you've gotten to know me over the years, I'm a pretty type A person, and every hour I was thinking to myself, every other founder is out there hustling and doing everything they can to move their business forward. And what are we doing? Are we falling behind against the general MO of what's happening out there? Are we keeping up? Are we ahead? And it was kind of eating me up inside. And then, we just started to think about what can we do? Can we send some marketing emails? Can we provide discounts off events in the future if it's booked now? And we just had no idea what was going to happen. And then, I was having a conversation with a business partner who was trying to do some face masks, and it kind of just got the ball rolling in my head. And I decided to see what New York City was doing. So we jumped on their website, and sure enough, New York City had put up a website saying, if you can produce PPE, we'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you can do. And mind you, we also had the space where we could produce it. So we reached out to a handful of partners and said, hey, do you think you could handle this piece of the pie? And kind of heard what we heard back from people, yes, no, yes, no. And we basically put in a quick application. And then literally from the time we put in the application the pace at which things snowballed was, I mean, we still think back about it and our heads snap when we think about how fast it happened. We put that application in. The very next day, we got an email from New York City. The next day, we were on a conference call with them. I had already built a model for what our pricing could be on this. That was a Friday. We gave them ballpark pricing. They said it's in the range. We made a sample shield, submitted that, and then just over the next week, it moved so fast. We went from not even having thought about this for a second to having a contract with the city, I think in about 8 or 9 days.
That's a compressed timeline, Sam. It's literally you built this business overnight. But I suppose when there's a significant need like that, entrepreneurs can roll up their sleeves and get it done. Maybe the terms that come to mind for me are rapid prototype development. You just went into a rapid development mode, and within a few days had mobilized to seize this opportunity. It sounds like you were essentially starting from scratch in terms of designing and putting in place a mass manufacturing process for goods that are primarily generic in nature, clearly not nearly as complex as the fashion goods that you had been focusing on. How do you attribute your ability to do it so quickly? What did you draw upon?
I'll say, first let me just clarify that we're not actually making the masks. We're making the face shields. It's the plastic shields that medical responders will often wear over the masks to prevent splashing in their face. A little bit more of a complex product than the mask, unless you get into the N95s, because those are complex. But when we look back at it, I mean, I really think this is a function of two things for us and why we've been able to set this up. First and foremost, it was how many resources could we pool, how fast could we pool those resources. We reached out to the manufacturer on my bag product. We reached out to about 5 different organizations to source staffing and personnel for us. We knew we had to staff from 0 up to about 60 people in about 2 weeks. Add in the fact that there's coronavirus happening and a lot of people are afraid, how do you do that? So we had to lean on these other organizations, and not just one, but 5. I think up now we're up to like 6 or 7 organizations that are helping us staff. So part of it was pulling those resources. And then, that was really Natalie driving the train on that and getting all the hiring done. On the other side, I actually think it's analytics. So my background on Wall Street was I was an analytics geek. So for a couple of weeks, I was just living in Excel, just looking at these models every which way, how much variance we have for every bit of timing and cost, and could we put it together? Where were our bottlenecks on staffing or anything else on logistics? And I think that's how we were able to put it together.
So in some ways, would you say that the opportunity found you, but in order to seize that opportunity and take advantage of it, you had to draw upon all the elements in your bag of tricks that you had accumulated over the years, and of course your network. And as you're describing that to me, the word consortium comes to mind. You built another consortium with all the contributors, the personnel and staffing sources, the various manufacturing contacts that you have. Is that the right way to think about it, as another consortium, if you will, with your consortium, Custom House, at the center of it?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. When we look at the initial consortium, the initial problem for us was how do we empower retailers to sell these custom and made-to-order brands, and that process cannot work in a one-off relationship, and that's what we knew about that. So consortium comes from the fact that you have to kind of pool the brands and pool the retailers and by having everybody on the same marketplace, you have power in numbers, and only then does that work. And that's exactly why that company is called Consortium. And to your point, we were in an environment with trying to put a face shield factory together, I don't want to say overnight, but within a few days. And had we not had some of those resources or not had the ability to kind of tack on some new guys quickly, motivate them, get them involved, it would have never worked. So you're dead on with that.
So now that you've put in place this engine, this system, I mean, where do you go from here with it? Are there still hurdles to overcome with the current manufacturing? Do you feel like you've perfected it? What does the near term look like for you with this new consortium?
In our first week of production, one thing that we did was we just tried to accumulate as much data and as much detailed data as we could. When we when we quoted the city on what price we could do this at, our goal was to keep it at the lowest possible price for the city and the highest efficiency to get them the shields and get the shields into the hands of the medical responders as fast as possible. So it wasn't just about squeezing every penny out of it. In fact, it wasn't that at all. We knew that we had to get our pricing down not only to the city, but also what our costs were. Materials pricing, we had pretty much, more or less nailed down, because once you price out materials, more or less, with some exceptions, you have that honed in. What you don't know is what labor pricing is going to be at. And I don't mean what it costs per person per hour. I'm talking about an efficiency rate. So we had some assumptions on how many shields people could make per hour or per day, how fast people can cut elastic, how fast people can glue foam, etc. But until you do that, you just have no idea. So in that first week, we were just timing our processes out every which way we could, analyzing the data. And then, when you analyze that data, you look at it and you say, okay, we should be making shields in this amount of time. Well, why is it 50% off? Well, you have variance because people got to take a bathroom break. People can't operate at a perfect efficiency clip for a full 8 hours. So we had to figure out what we got to do. There were a couple of places where we realized by purchasing some other materials that actually cost 2, 3, or 4 times as much, we can cut out some of the man hours and get these shields made faster for the city. So we've applied a ton of data. We've analyzed it every which way. And the question is, where is this now? We've brought down the time it takes to create a shield from 112 seconds. And then last week, we got it to just under 80 seconds. It was about 79 and a half. I mean, we were fighting for fractions of seconds every single day, every single hour. And then we decided to make some materials changes. And with those materials changes, we're going to probably get this time per shield definitely down under 60, likely under 50, and possibly closer to 40. Assuming we get these timings down and we get the pricing to where we want it to be, the question is, how long are we a face shield provider to New York City, to New York State, possibly FEMA, and then possibly to private organizations such as hospitals, nursing homes, and other government organizations. That's a lot of stuff we're looking at right now, and we're trying to see basically, once we get past our contract with the city, because they are our priority, where do we go from there?
So, Sam, 2 themes that I think jump out at me from what you just said are actionable data, the importance of collecting, analyzing, and understanding your data, and innovation. Innovation arising out of your decisions based on the data. Those sound like 2 important themes that got you to where you are, and that sounds like, to me, will continue to carry you forward. Can you comment a little bit more on, first of all, is that an accurate assessment? And how do you see the data and innovation, how do you see those themes playing a role moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely agree the data, I think, is a very big piece of it. like I mentioned, the staffing is a huge piece, and getting the right people into the right seat at the right time. In this environment with coronavirus, staffing is so much more complex because how do you keep that staff safe? How do you prevent your entire factory from being wiped out because of coronavirus? How do you make those shields safe when they go down to the medical responders? And these are we took some extreme measures and are doing things that companies won't do in regular times for their staff. So that's a very, very big piece of it. And then going back to your point, the data, I think what we've done in this first 2 weeks, it's probably where the data is the most important. And, we'll continue collecting and continue improving because you always have to do that. But, how much we can ratchet down on cost, timing, and all of that, it's much greater right now in these first few weeks than it is going forward. In terms of going forward, just going back to the startup world, one of my frustrations with the startup world is everybody talks about data. But when they're talking about data, they're not talking about real data. They're just talking about a customer email or a customer phone number or a customer name. And yeah, you can get that stuff. You can get that data and it can help your business because you can market to that customer. But the type of data that we're looking at here is substantially detailed. And the other thing is when you come into a business and you say, I'm not a manufacturer, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I got to figure it out. To me, the only way I'm going to figure it out is by kind of applying that data and figuring it out that way. So it's, to me, it was just what we had to do to get to where we are right now.
So Sam, let's take a minute to focus on something we haven't talked about so far, and that is the role of lawyers and the law and how that fit into your pivoting, particularly with respect to the manufacturing that you're doing now for the face shields and for the COVID-19 related needs. As you know, of course, we've worked together. Pepper's been supportive of Custom Consortium, and that I personally and my partner Hillary Carney, our government contract specialist, were involved. But can you talk a little bit more about the legal challenges specifically that came up on this project and in the pivoting of your business? Give me a sense of how you see the role of outside counsel in that process.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, you guys brought me into your emerging companies program. I forget the exact date, but it was about 4.5 years ago, I think. I don't know how much you knew about this, but I went out pretty wide in trying to identify who I wanted to work with, and clearly you guys won that. And I'm really glad that happened because, 4.5 years to continue, as a law firm, to continue standing beside me and keep going. I can't thank you guys enough for that. So, thank you first. But when this project came, I'm somebody who thinks that a lot of times I can just go it alone and get it done, just for efficiency's sake. If it's a small legal contract, I'll just say, all right, let me try to write something up. You've seen I've probably written up a handful of horrible legal docs myself and sent to you over the years, and I'm sure you've probably just chuckled at them. But when this came down, this was not only was it a substantially large contract, but also as a substantially important contract, and we needed to make sure everything was buttoned up. And as much as I think I can, do it on my own, I knew I had to call you guys on this. So, and I'm glad I did. You guys turned around and jumped on it the same day. I emailed you, if I remember correctly, like 10 a.m. I had an email back from you within an hour or two. Later that day, I think we were talking, and we had to get that contract done, I think, in about 36 or 48 hours, which is really not that much time when you're talking about a contract, especially with a government organization like New York City. And to New York City's credit, they have been exceptionally good at letting the bureaucratic walls kind of fall down to make things happen right now. So kudos to them. but yeah, I mean, this was not something I could do on my own, and you guys just stepped up and got it done in the exact time frame I would have wanted it done.
Well, I'm glad to hear that we could meet the timing. We know, that not only for our large clients, but our clients in the middle and even our small emerging companies, that timing is critical. The legal phrase is time is of the essence, and it certainly was here. And I knew that this was something that, although, as from an IP perspective, there were potentially some IP issues. We've been talking about that the main focus here was going to be on the government contracting and, having depth in that area with Hillary Carney in the DC office, bringing him to bear on the project. I think that got it moving in the right direction very quickly. And we took a very practical, pragmatic view of it. You mentioned New York City, letting down its bureaucratic safeguards. We didn't let down our safeguards in terms of the legal issues and what we would flag, but we tailored our advice to be appropriate to, what you were faced with and what you needed to accomplish. So, we were glad to be able to help you get that contract in place.
Yeah, just one thing I'll mention, when it came to New York City, just clarify, I don't think they let down their safeguards in any way. What they really did was just get very efficient. I mean, they were very buttoned up, but when I sent them an email, I got a response within an hour. I mean, who would have ever thought you could send an email to somebody in New York City and get an email back within an hour? So they just moved at lightning pace, and it was what was needed. And they set up the contract in a way that allowed us to get up and running and produce these shields. And I don't think, I don't know what other cities are doing, but it was just done the right way.
I have to admit, I was surprised at the responsiveness on their part as well. You were clearly, a top priority for them, or perhaps the way to say it is, the people being impacted in New York City are clearly a top priority for them, and they knew they needed people like you in the mix to help those who were, on the front line. To get them the equipment they needed. So it was quite remarkable to see that happen.
Peter, I'd love to hear kind of what went through your head when you got that first email from me saying this was happening. Were you just like, what is going on? Like, what was your first thought?
I have to admit that it wasn't what I was expecting to see in an email from you, but after the initial 5 or 10 seconds of reading it 2 or 3 times to make sure I was reading it properly, I realized that this was exactly what you were being asked to do for the city, and I knew that we could help you. So, I just saw it as, you being in the right place at the right time with the right tool set to be able to help people who really need help, and that we could be part of that, which, personally, professionally, and as a firm, I thought would be, gratifying, and that in that process we could at least play a small role in helping get that PPE to the people who need it the most. What did you learn about yourself and your team as a result of this change? I mean, I'm sure this has been maybe using a life-changing experience. Maybe that's too strong, perhaps, of a term, maybe not, but what have the takeaways been so far? And 2-part question: what is your hope for the future of the company now that you're doing something and in a position with the company that you probably never thought you'd be doing? How does that change where you go from here with Custom House and Custom Consortium and what you explained to us at the beginning of this interview?
That's an interesting question. I mean, as far as what I've realized about myself or my team, I think as an entrepreneur, I kind of always question myself, right? And I say, I think I can do X, Y, and Z, but maybe when it really comes down to it, can I or will I be able to pull it off? As an entrepreneur who has not raised much beyond a seed round, you look at that and you say, what can I do with capital? How fast could I move? Can I scale a business the way I think I could when it really comes down to it? And until that happens, you just don't know. You can think you're 100% right in the fact that you can do it, but until it happens, if you're not questioning it, that's a problem. The crazy thing, I think, is that we've actually probably gone even faster than I expected. I mean, every single day was changing, and the one thing I think I realized is that, I basically can definitely scale a company. So that question that had always been burning in the back of my mind, I think I confirmed it for myself. And I don't mean to brag, but I'm just happy that burden is kind of off my back. And now I can just kind of go full speed on doing what we're doing. In terms of my staff, I mean, Natalie and I work all day together, all day, every day. I don't even know if you know this, but Natalie and I have been dating now for almost 2 years. So, we work exceptionally well together. I think a couple of potential investors have looked at it and said there's a lot of risk, and they didn't know if they want to get involved with investing in a company where, the two leaders of the company are basically living together for a few years and dating each other. It's unfortunate for them. I think how Natalie and I operate together makes us that much of a better team. So, again, every project that we take on, whether it was Consortium or then Custom House or now Face Shields, we'll continue to prove that over and over and over again. And I think, we don't ever have to worry about how we work with each other. It's pretty much it just works. And as far as where do we take all this from here, well, the first thing is I think the Consortium and Custom House pairing still happens. Custom House will expand to a few cities end of this year to next year. That's all dependent on what the post-coronavirus world really looks like. But we really do believe that Custom House will be in 6 cities. They are, New York, Chicago, Dallas, Miami, San Fran, LA. And who knows if beyond that there's more, but those will continue to feed and fund Consortium's growth. Just to give you a tiny bit more on that, what we realized is one Custom House can fund Consortium's burn rate as long as we are in a pre-seed stage. Once we get to more of a seed and an A-round stage, you either have to raise VC money or you have to go open up more Custom Houses. And for many of the reasons that I mentioned, whatever investor doubts there were or time being wasted, we realized just funding it by building our own side business is the right way. Do I think we're going to become a full-on PPE manufacturer? I think it's something that we can do to continue funding the startup and build that business. I don't know if we would become a full-on manufacturer. The one interesting thing that I have thought about is if there are Custom Houses sitting in multiple cities, and when the next crisis hits, whatever that crisis is, could we become a hot potato go-to space that local cities or even the federal government says, hey, we know we have Custom Houses willing to, ready to go to jump back on the horn and make face shields or make some other product? And do we contract with them in a way where we're always ready? That's a possibility. It's something I've thought about. I think it would be interesting, but why couldn't they go do that with anybody else? They could. So I don't know how that looks, but I think as we get through these next few months of talking to more government agencies and figuring out what their needs are beyond this pandemic, we'll know how Custom House and Consortium could fit into filling that need in subsequent crises.
Well, thanks for sharing those thoughts, Sam. Those are some fascinating observations and even opportunities, particularly the one about Custom House locations being, potential, I'll use the term backup or disaster recovery type sites for, for future, any future crises the country might face, where you could play a role similar to what you're playing right now in New York City. Well, Sam, I want to ask if you have any final closing thoughts. Otherwise, I'd like to close out today with a big thanks to you and give you some kudos for your amazing story and how that, and we're glad that Pepper could be part of that, even if it's been a small part.
Yeah, obviously, with you guys being our legal representation and having done an excellent job, as you guys have kind of seen over the years, we're always coming up with a new idea that requires some creativity, not only on the business side, but also on the legal side. I'm sure this will add to that, and, consortium plus custom house plus face shields definitely doesn't fit into a neat box for anybody. So, you need good, legal representation to be able to cross your T's and dot your I's, and we appreciate that you guys are helping us do that. And if all goes as planned, that'll keep getting more and more complex.
Well, we look forward to that, Sam. I think we're in a time of change. You've pivoted a lot. Pepper pivots with its clients. The boxes, if you will, that, prior to COVID-19, define certain businesses and business models. I think those boxes are changing and those paradigms are shifting. So while what you're doing might, 6 months have sounded, or 3 months, or even 2 months ago sounded bizarre and unusual, we're in a different place now. And, what may have been norms, not only for emerging companies like yours, but also for law firms like Pepper, may change. And we have to be prepared to adapt and adjust, just as you have. Indeed, daily, you're adapting and adjusting to deliver on your contract with the City of New York. So, we plan to be there supporting our clients as they do that.
Well, we appreciate it. Thank you, Peter.
Thanks, Sam. Much appreciated. Let you get back to work now. We know you have much to do.
Have a good one.
I hope our audience has found this discussion informative. If you're interested in hearing more about our Pepper Seed program, visit seed.pepperlaw.com. And if you're interested in other aspects of Pepper's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, please visit our Pepper Hamilton and Troutman Sanders COVID-19 Resource Center at covid19.pepperlaw.com. Thank you for listening.